Have you ever noticed how certain people at a certain point in their lives simply begin to withdraw? Not with anger, not with resentment, not even with sadness. They just quietly step back. They stop showing up at gatherings. They stop responding to every message. They stop performing the version of themselves that the world had grown comfortable with. And from the outside, it looks like something went wrong. People say they changed. People say they became distant, cold, strange. But from the inside, something entirely different is happening. Something that very few people will ever understand unless they have lived it themselves. These are the spiritually awake, and they are not running away from the world. They are returning to themselves. Alan Watts spent his entire life trying to explain this very phenomenon. This strange and misunderstood process where a person begins to see through the game. The social game, the identity game, the ego game. And once you see through it, you cannot pretend anymore. You cannot go back to playing the same role. You cannot keep laughing at things that are not funny, saying yes when your whole body screams no, or performing enthusiasm for a life that was never really yours to begin with. In the Taboo Against Knowing Who You Are, Watts wrote about what he called the hallucination of being a separate ego enclosed in a bag of skin. He said this feeling of isolation, this idea that you are a small self locked inside a body surrounded by an alien world, is one of the greatest tricks ever pulled on the human mind. And it was not pulled by some outside force. It was pulled by society itself, by the very culture that raised you, educated you, and taught you who to be. Think about that for a moment. From the time you were born, you were told who you are. Your parents gave you a name. Your teachers gave you a role. Your peers gave you a reputation. And slowly, without ever being asked, you began to believe that this was you. That the name, the role, the image in other people's eyes was your actual identity. Watts was clear about this. He said that the child is tricked into the ego feeling by the attitudes, words, and actions of the society which surrounds him. Other people teach us who we are. Their attitudes to us are the mirror in which we learn to see ourselves, but the mirror is distorted. And this is where it all begins. The distortion, the confusion, the quiet suffering that follows you everywhere but has no name. Because if your whole identity is built on what other people think of you, then your whole life becomes an exhausting performance. You are constantly managing perceptions, constantly adjusting your behavior, constantly seeking approval from people who are themselves seeking approval from others. It is a wheel that never stops turning. And at some point, the spiritually awake person steps off. But why do they disappear? Why don't they stay and try to change things from the inside? Why don't they keep engaging with the world, keep participating in the endless conversations, keep being part of the machinery? Because they have seen something that cannot be unseen. They have seen that the machinery itself is the problem. That the constant noise, the constant activity, the constant need to be someone is exactly what keeps people asleep. And they realize that if they want to stay awake, they need space, they need silence, they need distance. Watts understood this better than almost anyone. He knew that the society we live in is, in his words, playing a game with self-contradictory rules. It commands you to be free while also commanding you to conform. It tells you to be yourself while punishing you every time your true self makes others uncomfortable. It says think for yourself, but only if your thoughts match what everyone else is thinking. This double bind, as Watts called it, creates a kind of permanent confusion in the human mind. You are told to be independent, but every system around you is designed to make you dependent. And when you finally see this, something breaks. Not you, the spell breaks. In The Wisdom of Insecurity, Watts takes this even further. He writes about how modern humans live like ghosts, caught between a past that no longer exists and a future that has never arrived. We are always projecting ourselves forward, always trying to anticipate what comes next, always planning, always worrying, always anywhere except here. And in this process, we miss the only moment that is real, the present one. Watts said that if happiness always depends on something expected in the future, we are chasing something that will forever escape us, until the future and ourselves vanish into the abyss of death. This is the realization that hits the spiritually awake person like a cold wave. They look around and they see that almost everyone is living for tomorrow, working for retirement, sacrificing today for some imagined future reward, tolerating misery now because maybe things will get better later. And the awake person can no longer do this. Not because they are lazy, not because they lack ambition, but because they have understood in their bones, in their blood, in the very center of their being, that there is no later. There is only now. And if now is being wasted on pretending, performing, and pleasing, then the whole thing is a terrible joke. So they withdraw, not out of arrogance, not out of judgment, but out of necessity. They pull back because they need to feel their own aliveness again, without the constant interference of a world that has forgotten what it means to be alive. They step away because the noise of social expectation has drowned out something essential inside them. A quiet knowing that was always there, but that they could never hear because everyone around them was talking too loudly. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. There is a word in Eastern philosophy that Watts love to talk about, Wu Wei. It means acting without forcing. And it is, in many ways, the secret behind why awake people withdraw. Because they have stopped forcing. They have stopped trying to make things happen through sheer willpower and started allowing things to happen through presence and attention. But society does not reward this kind of being. Society rewards hustle, productivity, constant output, visible achievement. If you are not doing something, you are nothing. That is the unspoken rule, and it is a rule that the spiritually awake person has quietly rejected. When you reject this rule, the world does not understand you anymore. Your friends do not understand why you stopped chasing promotions. Your family does not understand why you are suddenly comfortable with less. Your colleagues do not understand why you are no longer stressed about deadlines that used to keep you up at night. And because they do not understand, they fill the gap with their own stories. He must be depressed. She must be going through something. They must have given up. But none of these stories are true. The awake person has not given up. They have simply stopped pretending that the race was worth running. Watts wrote extensively about how our attempt to control life is itself the source of our suffering. In the Taboo Against Knowing Who You Are, he described how the ego, in its exaggerated sense of being separate, is essentially sawing off the branch on which it sits. The more the ego fights to maintain its position, its status, its security, the more anxious it becomes. Because the ego knows, somewhere underneath all the bravado, that it is not real. It is a construction. And social fiction, and like any fiction, it is constantly under threat of being exposed. This is why awakening is so terrifying for most people. Because to wake up means to see that the person you thought you were, the one with the name, the reputation, the history, the preferences, the carefully curated identity, is not who you actually are. Watts described the ego as a wall of defense, around a wall of defense, around nothing. Not nothing in the sense of emptiness or void, but nothing in the sense that there is no fixed kernel at the center. There is no separate little man or woman sitting inside your head, pulling levers and making decisions. What you really are is the entire process of life expressing itself through a particular point of view. And when you see this, really see it, not as an idea, but as a living experience, the game of social identity loses its grip on you. You stop needing to prove yourself. You stop needing to explain yourself. You stop needing to be seen, validated, applauded, because you are no longer playing for the audience. You are simply being. But this being is not acceptable to the world. The world wants you performing. The world wants you producing. The world wants you anxious, because anxious people consume. Anxious people obey. Anxious people keep the system running. And a person who is at peace, genuinely at peace, is of no use to a system built on restlessness. So the awake person disappears. Not into a cave or a monastery, though some do that. Most simply disappear in plain sight. They are still there. They still go to work. They still talk to people. But something in them has changed, and everyone can feel it. There is a silence around them that was not there before. A stillness that makes others nervous. Because that stillness is a mirror, and most people do not want to see what is reflected in it. Watts said in The Wisdom of Insecurity, that the real reason human life can be so utterly exasperating and frustrating is not because there are facts called death, pain, fear, or hunger. The madness of it all is that when such facts are present, we circle, buzz, and whirl, trying to get the I out of the experience. We pretend that we are separate from what is happening to us. And this pretending, this constant effort to stand outside of our own lives, is what makes everything feel so unbearable. The awake person has stopped pretending. They have allowed themselves to be fully inside their experience. And in doing so, they have found something that the busy, distracted, performing world has forgotten. They have found that this moment, just as it is complete. It does not need anything added to it. It does not need to be improved, optimized, or fixed. And from this place of completeness, the noise of the world sounds different. It sounds like what it is. A lot of people running in circles, desperately searching for something that was never lost. Watts saw this clearly. He said that every individual is a unique expression of the whole, as every branch is a particular outreaching of the tree. To manifest individuality, every branch must have a sensitive connection with the tree. But we have severed that connection. We have convinced ourselves that we are separate branches, floating in space, needing to compete with every other branch for sunlight. And in that competition, we have lost touch with the very root that gives us life. The awake person remembers the root, and in remembering, they naturally pull back from the competition. Not because they think they are better than others, not because they look down on the world, but because competing for a position in an illusion is something they can no longer take seriously. This is perhaps the most misunderstood part of spiritual awakening. People think it makes you superior. It does not. It makes you quieter. People think it makes you detached. It does not. It makes you more present than you have ever been. People think it takes you away from life. It brings you closer to life than you have ever been. But it does take you away from the performance of life. And in a world where almost everyone is performing, that looks like disappearing. Watts also spoke about how, in Zen, there is nothing to achieve. There is no trophy, no final destination, no spiritual status to attain. Life, he said, is like music. The point of music is not to get to the end of the song as quickly as possible. It is to listen to each note, to feel each beat, to be present with the sound as it unfolds. But our entire civilization is built on the opposite principle. Get to the end, finish the race, reach the goal, and when you reach it, find the next one. There is always a next one. And the awake person has realized that this never-ending chase is the very thing that prevents you from actually living. So when you see someone withdrawing from the noise, from the hustle, from the relentless doing, do not assume they are broken. Do not assume they need saving. Do not project your own discomfort onto their silence. They may be doing the most courageous thing a human being can do in the modern world. They may be choosing to be real in a society that rewards being fake. They may be choosing presence in a world addicted to distraction. They may be choosing peace in a culture that profits from anxiety. And if you are one of those people, if you have felt the pull towards silence, towards solitude, toward a quieter and more honest way of being, know this. You are not losing yourself. You are finding something that was buried under years of conditioning, expectations, and social noise. You are returning to the only place where truth has ever lived. Here, now, in this breath, in this moment that is dying and being reborn faster than thought can follow. Watts wrote that when the mind discovers that it cannot catch itself, when thought realizes it cannot think about itself without creating another layer of illusion, something extraordinary happens. The split between I and me, between man and the world, between the ideal and the real, comes to an end. The mind becomes whole. Free from clutching at itself, the hands can handle. Free from looking after themselves, the eyes can see. Free from trying to understand itself, thought can think. In such feeling, seeing, and thinking, life requires no future to complete itself. In this moment, it is finished. This is not a religious experience. This is not a mystical fantasy. This is what happens when a person stops fighting with reality and allows themselves to simply be part of it. And this is what the spiritually awake have discovered, not through books, not through teachers, though those may have helped, but through the direct experience of their own awareness, right here, right now. They disappear from society because society was never the place where they belonged. They belonged to life itself. And life, as what's never tired of reminding us, is not a problem to be solved. It is a mystery to be lived. Now I want to hear from you. Have you felt this pull towards silence and withdrawal? Have you noticed yourself stepping back from the noise, not because you are broken, but because you are waking up? Leave your comment below. Your experience may help someone else who is going through the same thing and feels alone in it. And if this message resonated with you, do not stop here. The next video continues this conversation in a way you do not want to miss. Keep watching, because what comes next could change everything.